All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to USD290 Board of Education meeting. It is June 22nd at 7 p.m. We do have 7 board members present, 6 that are physically here, and 1 that is coming to us virtually. Mr. Winkert is over there on the computer. So at this time, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand, please.
Oh, Harold did.
Harold did. Shanda, did you raise your hand? Thank you. All right, that passes 7-0. We are on to the consent agenda. Dr. Cobbs, is there anything you want to mention to us on consent?
No, consent agenda is just continuation of contracts for the most part. Should just be normal operational procedures for all of us.
Okay, thank you.
And I was going to ask, on our, and I don't think I saw it in our update, on our workers' compensation, what was our, where are we at on our mod, what our ranking is? Because it'll go down right after we have those 2 go off.
Yeah, so I don't remember what our mod is now, but we went from $150,000 to $90,000 to $60,000 this year. I don't exactly remember what our mod is, but it's as good as it has been in a long time.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
We're much better in terms of workers' comp.
Yeah, that's good.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor of passing the consent agenda, please raise your right hand.
Now Harold.
Thank you, and that passes 7-0 as well. We do not have any comments from the public this evening. So we are moving on down. We have a couple presenters tonight. They're going to present to us on liability insurance. So I think first up we have Mr. Eric Haig with CBiz, who's going to give us his presentation. Welcome.
Make sure I'm not yelling too loud at anybody. Thanks for having us today. We've been working with the district for, I think, 6 or 7 years now, right, Terry? Something like that. We have long been the broker that has been partnering with KASB for their sponsored insurance program for the state of Kansas. Historically, since we've been working with the district, to give a brief history, that program was written through a carrier named Wright Specialty. Wright Specialty left the state in about 2019, similar to what other kind of regional carriers have done in the space. The market has been hardening in the last probably 4 or 5 years. So whereas when I started working with Ottawa School District, we had 3 or 4 different carrier partners to present insurance for, that number has kind of slowly been dwindling down. With Wright Specialty leaving in 2019 being kind of the biggest Christmas surprise I guess we got. But really what's driving a lot of those retail kind of carriers exiting the space is driven predominantly by property claims. Not necessarily in Kansas, but across the country as you see wildfires, hurricanes, wind and hail losses, all of those things. So what we've seen from carriers pushing back on are exiting a state entirely, increasing deductibles where they are staying in the state, changing terms. For example, we're seeing a lot of carriers that are changing their terms on a roof claim to be an actual cash value basis instead of replacement costs, which means that if there was a claim, they would have depreciation on your roofs. Also excluding cosmetic roof damage entirely. So there have been a lot of changes in that space lately. Wright Specialty left Kansas, and KASB partnered with a pool by the name of KERMIP, which has been around for about 5 years. In 2019, KERMIP had about 22 members. We expect that to grow to 60 or 70 members this year. July 1st is when the renewal of that pool is. So really, I know in looking at the board docs, you guys have another option to review today. It's really difficult to entirely kind of compare the pool's offering to what you're seeing from EMC specifically. The pool is more, in my opinion, of a kind of a longer term strategy for rapidly changing insurance marketplace. Ottawa would be essentially opting to combine your exposures and your risk profile with those of other districts across the state. in an attempt to kind of stop trading dollars with insurance carriers. So we have a few documents today to kind of go over. If you don't mind, we'll actually kind of start with the pricing page, I think, that we sent out. There it is, yep. Okay, so looking at this document, the district paid about just under $200,000 for insurance last year. So certainly we understand almost a sticker shock to seeing the insurance premiums for this year, both from the pool and from the EMC option as well. You'll see kind of on the fixed costs up here, what we're really looking at is the top 4 or 5 lines, kind of your blocking and tackling insurance coverages, your casualty, your property, the boiler and machinery. Also, the pool this year opted to, at the pool level, so everyone that joins the pool takes on or gets the $2 million in cyber liability and a robust crisis response coverage. So think kind of like a coverage for a violent event, PR, quick rebuilds if you have to move out of a building because of a violent type of event. Under there you have kind of the cost to manage the pool and the fees associated in terms of compensation to the pool administrator. So for the fixed costs, you're looking at $201,000, which from last year isn't too bad. Where we run into a real kind of an increase and where it's hard to really make a kind of true apples to apples comparison on pricing is the variable cost. So each district contributes to the pool's loss fund. So you see the $106,639 for Ottawa School District. That is actuarially driven and is really being driven by 3 factors in Ottawa right now. The $1.5 million wind and hail claim from 4 years ago. We had about a $200,000 auto claim 5 years ago and another $42,000 in 16-17. The minimum loss fund contribution for any district of any size is $10,000. They fund, if you go to the other one I sent you earlier to kind of go over, and it's page 2, if you don't mind. So this is the structure of the pool this year. And if you scroll down a little bit on the far, I guess, let me get my right side, you see a $3.5 million annual Kermit loss fund. That's all the money that all the districts pool together to pay deductibles under the pool. So without trying to bore you guys too much with insurance, essentially the yellow on this graph is the school district's deductibles for a variety of different claims. So for general liability claims, auto liability, things of that nature, it's $0. For school board liability, $2,500, crime, $1,000. The property deductible initially when we quoted was $50,000 and $50,000. That was we got the pricing for the pool early in June, which with kind of a moving target of how many districts would actually be joining. We've retained up to this point 100% of our clients in the pool, so there's been a little bit more confidence in the structure from the carriers up top. So we're actually going to be providing the option at $25,000 deductible with no change in the premium. So you guys essentially for a property claim would pay the yellow, and then the pool jumps in from the loss fund of $3.5 million to pay that next chunk, the pool SIR. So for a property claim, we're seeing $350,000. Where it gets a little kind of really insurance nerdy is this variable ADD property deductible. So for the first large property claim that the pool takes on every year, the pool takes on an additional $350,000 from the loss fund. Really trying to separate as far as we can what the pool can handle within its own loss fund and when insurance has to chip in. So if you go back to the pricing page, thanks for all your help on this, you'll see on the very bottom here a $13,491 funding for that annual disappearing deductible. This is the first year the pool has that structure in place, so we're essentially pre-funding that additional layer of a deductible for 1 year. It will carry over. They anticipate that line item to be about a third of the cost going forward. But going back to the loss fund, and really one of the benefits of the pool is that these are variable costs for a reason, and based on how the pool performs throughout the year, the district is eligible to get dollars back from that loss fund. Actuarially, they do their actuary math to about a 60% confidence level. So while we can't depend on a 40% return of the loss fund. That's where the actuaries have put the pick. So that'd be, essentially $42,500. We're adding the additional coverage for the cyber and the crisis response. That's about another $14,600. So trying to make this kind of as apples to apples as possible with some of those variable costs, the additional coverages that you're seeing. It's hard to really kind of pinpoint just a side-by-side premium for premium against EMC or any other kind of retail carrier. I do want to leave some time for questions because I know there's a lot of kind of questions we have about the pool. I can go over more of that structure in that graph if you'd wish, but I want to be sensitive to the time you all have tonight.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Haig?
Yeah, so you're talking about on the, let's see, I guess, in the loss fund.
Yep.
So if everything goes well, we would be eligible for money back out of that loss fund. So that would come off the 322,000?
Yeah, so the pool pays dividends 5 years after a loss, because obviously in your first year of losses, especially on a liability type of loss, they tend to not be mature or developed. So they wait a bit of time to see how those claims develop before they start returning money. So the pool is five years old. They're returning dividends to the original members this first year. 4 of the 5 years, the pool has been up and running. The loss fund has been sufficient to cover all of the claims. And so for 4 of those 5 years, there is a dividend of some value going back to the membership. In the 1 year that the loss fund was not sufficient to pay for the claims, if you go back to the schematic again, that BRIT $2 million aggregate protection loss is an additional insurance policy on top of the loss fund in the event the loss fund has been eroded. We've gotten a lot of questions about that loss fund. Gallagher runs this pool. They've said of the 100 pools they manage across the country, every single pool where they have this loss fund has never had to do any sort of assessment or anything against its members where they have the stop loss protection on top of it.
So that loss fund, is that any type of investment? Is it earning anything while it's all sitting there as a fund?
That's a great question. It's not really earning. I wouldn't say it's earning money in any sort of really.
I'm just saying it's a big number, so I could see even at 0.5%, it would.
Similar to like any insurance type of carrier, it gets kind of set aside to pay for future claims, and that money does earn investment income. It's not very, I wouldn't say, aggressive type of.
No, you wouldn't want to be
right.
because it's everybody's money.
Right. But yeah. Good question. Yeah.
Can you tell me what strategies you employ or use to help get that down, the losses down in the districts?
For the district? Yeah, Ottawa specifically, it's pretty difficult to loss control for wind and hail. So to a large degree, there are ways to mitigate that, based on the type of roofing material you might put on that can help mitigate some claims. Obviously, that comes with its own type of investments at a kind of capital level. The district had a large uninsured auto claim 5 years ago, where essentially there was an accident, I believe, with some employees, and the driver that was not an employee didn't have insurance. And so that ends up coming back to the district. So the losses that we've really seen Ottawa have certainly are very difficult to loss control for. I would say to the benefit of Ottawa, we work with districts that happen to have a lot of continued employment practices type claims. I think your workers' compensation mod is a testament to the things you guys are already doing. I know we don't do your work comp for you, but I think that's a clear indication. Some of the fees that go into the pool pricing do include loss control visits. I know that we have a certified playground inspector on C-Business staff that comes out and does certifications of the playgrounds. So of course we want to kind of make sure we're doing everything in our power to be as risk averse as possible. And I think another area that the pool is kind of providing additional coverage is, I know there's lots of conversations in the insurance marketplace on the confidence of values in terms of, are we insuring our buildings to an appropriate level? The pool's pricing does include, I think at 3-year intervals, replacement cost valuations of all the buildings, things of that nature, which isn't really necessarily a loss mitigation strategy, but sleep insurance almost to know that you're covering what you need to cover. So,
Eric, if I can jump in for just
Yeah.
a second. I saw the look on some people's faces when he talked about an uninsured motorist impacting it. That was an uninsured motorist driving their car.
yes, it wasn't the district uninsured. It was,
They weren't driving
yeah.
a school vehicle, or they were, that was a different accident, for them, impacting one of our drivers in the bus, but, and the people within it. The other thing that if you would talk about with them, talk about the span of the contract.
Oh, yeah.
Opt-out options of the contract.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that our board understands completely what we're getting into with either company. in
Yep.
terms of the-
So the pool at this time requires a 2-year agreement. So if you join the pool 7/1 of 2020, you will be in the pool for this year and next year, at which point it's year to year. The opt-out of the pool essentially requires, if we fast forward, in December, prior to the next 7/1 renewal date, you have to notify the pool that you are intending on looking elsewhere. You have about a 60-day window to solicit bids and kind of tell them whether or not you are in for the following year or not. That's obviously so there's a confidence level when they go and build this big structure to kind of know how big they're building for. So as you can imagine, when they went from 22 members this last year to 60, 70, or 80, it's taken some time to kind of put together all the pieces in terms of confidence levels of how many members there'd be for 2020.
So I have two questions. I know we have these couple things that we've talked about that will be coming off, I think, in about 2 years. Now, that should substantially drop that 106,000, I think, line item, right?
Yep.
Like
Assuming no
substantial.
additional losses, you
Right.
should see a significant decrease in the loss fund based on your history, I'd say the last 3 or 4 years. We work with we're adding some members to the pool this year that are of substantial size that are contributing near the minimum or slightly above.
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Hague at this time? All right, thank you very much
Thank you,
for
guys.
your time.
Appreciate
We
it.
appreciate it. Okay, and next we have folks from Porter, Spears, and Bundy. We have Sarah and Charlie. Are you speaking with us also, or is this all Sarah?
I'm
Okay.
watching.
Handing off the company.
And Sarah, I apologize. I don't know your new last name.
Oh, it's Oakleaf. That's okay.
Leaf.
I
Okay,
go by
thank you.
Porter. Everybody
Welcome.
knows me by Porter, and so that's
Okay.
fine. Don't
Well,
worry about it.
Welcome.
I still sign everything Sarah Porter Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends I sign it Oakleaf. I don't know. My husband sometimes wonders. That's okay. Okay, so we have come to the table with the opposing company EMC. There are actually only 2 riders in the state of Kansas. There is EMC and the pool. Okay, so for the last few years, they've represented, CBIZ has represented WRM, the company who you guys were with before. And during that time, CBIZ said, don't go to the pool, don't go to the pool. It's, don't go to the pool because bad things can happen within the pool. So, luckily we were able to come with an EMC quote, which we were nervous we weren't going to get, but because of COVID, we initiated this process back in February of this year with the pretense that we were getting EMC. So I called around to the different school districts and then COVID happened. So they actually put it on hold for all new representatives like Porter Spears or any independent agency. But luckily, they have decided to let us use another agency within we have a whole group of agencies that we work with. It's called the Bison Group. We've combined with different agencies within that group to be able to represent EMC. So they've let us do that. So luckily, we've come with a quote that was very similar to what you guys had with WRM, which you guys were very happy to have. So you can be sure that your property is covered. We actually updated and went through the property and have decided to raise the coverage on that for you guys to around 118 million, give or take a few. They will also have loss control people that will come out and do assessments on the changes to the buildings that have been done, and there's been so many changes over the last few years. So we're so lucky to have that here at USD 290. So they're going to come and look through all of it, make sure that it's all appropriately insured. Okay, it is at replacement cost. Okay, and it is a $25,000 deductible on the property. Okay, there's not going to be any variable costs. You're not going to owe any additional assessments halfway through the year because the school district down the road has a large $5 million claim. So you're not going to be assessed any additional fees. The cost is this amount, and it's not going to change for you for that, which is one thing that the pool has always had, is a change in cost, and that's why it's called variable costs. So it will be set at this amount. The only changes that would ever be made within the policy would be if we decided to change the building valuation. Let's say the high school, they want to add another 5 million, and you guys feel like that that's appropriate, then it would change at that point, but that's it. The liability is the same as what you had before. You have the crime, you have the coverages that he was talking about. Let's say someone, something horrible happens at the high school, and people need counseling, students need counseling because of some horrific event. You have all of those coverages as well. We tried to match them as much as possible to what the pool offers, but also what you had before, okay? So this is true insurance. You are paying for what you get, what you see here. It is not going to change, which is the major play versus the pool. So I'm assuming there's going to be quite a few questions.
How long, again, terms for, is it a 2-year?
No, there is no, no. In fact, there is no contract. So like with a pool, when you want to exit the pool, they don't actually have to allow you to exit. They actually might make you stay in there. There's actually no rules that say that they have to take your cancellation. And if they decide to, then most people that have experienced this in states that have been nearby us have seen large assessments because of that. So there is no term. So if you want to cancel in 6 months, you can do that without any problems. Yeah.
What about loss prevention strategies and things?
So EMC basically wrote the book on that. That is actually included in there. They have a ton of things, anything that you could possibly want, from helping the kitchen staff to helping the playground, to come out and assess all of the buildings, to help teachers with sexual harassment training, whatever you might need. We can go and find that for you, but you guys can too, and also the loss control specialists within EMC will come out and help us through all of that as well.
So you say like they will come out and look at like life safety things like handrails and whatnot if we went with your guys' proposal.
Yes, they
and that
definitely
way we
will.
make sure that we head off any issues.
Yes, they definitely will. In fact, you know, Dad and I both graduated from here. Mrs. Alderman was one of my teachers. So first grade here at the school, actually. And when there were no walls. We did school with no walls here. But yeah, they will come out and they'll tell you to put up walls. But yeah, they will come out and do all of that loss prevention. In fact, I think you guys just had someone come out and do evaluations on the buildings, and they want to come out and do their own assessments as well, just to make sure.
Okay.
And then we present those changes to you guys. So let's say you're not happy with, let's say they want to lower the high school by, you know, $10 million, and you guys don't want to do that. We don't have to, and it will maintain our replacement cost.
Okay.
Sarah, so even though EMC is a national company, is that right? But you and Charlie would be our people, right? You would be
We
the
would be your
ones
people.
here locally in Ottawa taking care of us if we.
That's
went
exactly
with-
right.
with-
Yeah, yeah. So they're actually all over, the country. They actually have an office out of Wichita, which is really nice. There's one in Kansas City, and then there's all over, the United States. But we do have a home office in Wichita, so that's kind of nice. So we do have local Kansas people assessing these risks, which is really important because in Kansas we have so many crazy things that people don't have in other states. So, I mean, we don't have hurricanes, but we have crazy tornadoes that will pop up here, and then a new storm will populate 2 hours later down the road, and it'll be a completely new storm. So,
Yep.
they take that into consideration. Yeah. So they know that, and they've been doing it since 1974. They haven't been doing it for 4.5 years. So they have the tried and true. They know what they're doing in school districts.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Sarah?
No.
All right, thank you so much. We appreciate
Okay,
your.
thank you very much. And if you do come up with any other questions and you think about them, just let us know.
Perfect,
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, one, I want to thank Sarah and I want to thank Eric. CBiz has been a huge help to us over the course of time. Sarah, forgot something maybe, did you?
I did.
I heard the O.
Dad, you just remind me. That's why I needed to stand up here. They do offer a dividend, EMC does. So like they were saying, they would take off that amount for the loss fund or whatever that portion was. They actually provide a dividend, and they have given in the state of Kansas for the last 5 years, given a return dividend. And it is a proportionate dividend based on the amount of premiums that you pay versus the losses that they paid out.
Okay,
Okay.
Thanks.
thank you. No, you're fine.
Before we get to the point of discussion, there are a couple of things that that I wanted to address. One, again, appreciate Eric and CBiz and everything that that they've done through Wright and now proposing the pool process for us, as well as the Porter Spears Bundy Group for their work. The issue in the state of Kansas is that liability insurance has almost become a monopolistic venture, and there are not many options out there, which you've heard stated today. That doesn't lend itself to great competition in terms of driving the price for insurance down. The reality of it is that insuring schools is a losing cause in terms of the business world because of their volume and because of the dollars that are associated with them, especially in the state of Kansas where we have storms fairly regularly. Chris also brought up life processes, and just so you know, there's some duplicity that occurs here between our liability insurance and our workers' comp insurance. So not only do we have this through our liability insurance, but this is an annual process between me and the KASB Risk Management Group, which we continue their contract tonight. Every year, Liz Maysberg-Clark and Alan Keeler go through each one of our buildings to identify any of those life safety procedures that we need to address, how we're working through workers' comp issues, which is a part of the reason why we continue to see a declination there. And I'm going to knock on wood to make sure that we don't see anything crazy happen this year. But that's been a big piece of us moving forward, is really identifying what it is that our insurance carriers are trying to help us accomplish and making sure that we implement them appropriately. So with that, that is the situation with our liability insurance. It is not a great spot to be in, to be up against the wall to make a decision. But I think that you heard Sarah talk this evening about, we tried to start this process in February. We tried to do to make sure that we were ready to go in terms of making a good decision and moving forward. And COVID-19 has impacted everybody in a number of different ways. And with only 2 companies that we can utilize in the process, we kind of have to play on their terms and when they're ready to be able to do so. So with that, is there much discussion in terms of what we're going to do before we make a recommendation? Lydia?
I have a question, and I'm sure it's just right there, and it's me. I'm not seeing it. The last person said that we had the 2 prices were for increased $20 million
Yes.
of coverage. What was the pools? Could I get those numbers of what the coverage is? Like
Oh.
the pool's price, is it the same coverage as their first number, or the EMC's first number, or their second? number?
That's a good question. Sarah, do you know?
Were you asking about EMC or were you asking about the pool?
I
There-
think I'm asking maybe for just
Both?
all three.
Oh, yeah. So the question is
I'm
really.
sorry.
The first proposal, did it meet the same terms as the pool proposal before we added the 20?
So the pool, well, I mean, you can speak to the pool,
Yeah, you,
but,
for
you
what
know,
you have.
For what I have, it is.
Sarah, I'm sorry, could you come up to the mic so that Mr. Wingert can hear, because he's virtual and he needs to have somebody close to the microphone.
Because Ryan, I know you had sent the email that they had increased that, so I
Okay.
want to know what I'm
I
comparing.
understand now what you're saying. So I provided you documents that we got the quote so fast, they did it for us so quickly, and then we decided to raise, Ryan and Terry talked, and they decided to raise the coverage on the buildings. They felt like the spreadsheet that was given to us, it didn't include the performing arts, and it didn't include that they attached the vocational building to the high school. So they felt like the coverages needed to be raised, and we also felt like Lincoln was underinsured and the middle school was underinsured. So we raised the coverage 20 million. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's
trying
going to
to
be different than the 257 that's in this.
It's up there.
It's 295,
295,
704.
sorry. They gave us that at 3:15 today, so sorry. Because
It was updated.
It was in an email update.
Right, I got those numbers.
yeah, so that's why there's a difference.
So does yours include did you increase did they do the same? Or I want to know if I'm comparing like apples to apples here, if we have different things within the prices, and I'm sure it's just me.
No, I think there's probably different things. I mean, I'm not going to speak to the spreadsheet that you all have, obviously. I do know that the document that we sent into the pool back earlier this year did include the Performing Arts Center, and it did include the increase at Garfield. If there have been other changes to increase values further, those would not be contemplated in our price. I can say, just generally speaking, the rate per $100 in building value under the pool is about 10 cents, so we can kind of do the quick math. If I saw what that number was specifically, I think probably,
I'm going to do it.
yeah, there you go. So I don't know what the increase at Lincoln specifically was. I wouldn't say it's the 20 million because we did have two of the things included in there. So our rate per $100 in values is about 10 cents. I think it's probably higher with EMC in terms of your cost per $100 in values, but I'm not sure you're looking at something apples to apples in terms of the valuation if there were changes made after we did our initial presentation.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Can I come back and, okay, sure. So, right, so that's true. They are not apples to apples because nobody offers anything quite like the pool. So it is pretty much almost apples to apples to what they offered through WRM, Markel, that they sold you for 4, 5, or 6 years. It was a great program. So we matched those coverages or raised the coverage on the property. The pool's coverage on property is quite different in the fact that it is a blanket and it also includes the vehicles in there too. So it includes inland marine, it includes all the property into like a blanket, where ours separates it all out. So you can see what exactly you are
Depending
covering.
on each individual vehicle.
Right. So it's more apples to apples to what they presented 2 years ago to you, with more coverage because we've increased all the building values and everything. But it's similar coverage.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It does.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So we wanted to make sure, because of the addition of the PAC, the addition of the pre-K at Garfield, that we were not underinsured for any catastrophic events in our district, which is why we added the additional dollars to make sure that we were covered across the district.
And that's why I brought up earlier on the life safety stuff was the PAC, because I know we're going to have some risks there with students and staff, being elevated.
Yep.
And I would love for a second set of eyes or third set of eyes, whatever we want to call it, to come in and look and make sure we have all those fall protections or slip or trip protections covered, because
I think it's important for them to come in and help us understand how doors shut on catwalks and make sure that they're not available to just anybody walking through to be able to get up into those spaces and they're locked appropriately and that we have
Right.
the appropriate safeguards in place. I certainly think that's important.
I have a question. Terry, may I ask you a question? I know that you are so good at all of this finance. This is what you do, and you've looked through these and poured over it. Are you comfortable with the coverages that are covered by both policies? Are we able just to kind of look at the bottom line? Does that make sense? Are you comfortable with coverage of either policy? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Other discussion for me?
Go, you go. No.
Is the pool, that 106,000, is that a fixed number or could it go down?
It could go down and should go down. I think I could probably speak for Eric on this part. It can go down. It's based upon the number of events that we've had against our district. One of them comes off this year. The other one comes off next year, I believe. Is that correct? In terms of how that would be reduced. So if we don't have any other issues or claims against us, we would see a decrease in that $106,000 claim value, the loss value. Am I correct in saying all that?
So I'll add one thing.
I think that goes with what I asked him on the 106. If in 2 years those things go off, it should be a substantial decrease in the 106.
Yeah, not only should it be if assuming no losses,
Right,
it should
yeah.
be a substantial decrease on your pricing specifically. And then further to your question, in the dividend payment, if the pool itself performs very well this year, even if you guys have a bad year this year, your loss fund pricing for you might be still high in future years, similar to what we're seeing now. But if the pool itself performs very well across the state, that 106 variable cost and the dividend you get 5 years from now could see a substantial $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 decrease.
Right, and this year it could perform well because I think we all can say by watching the weather that we have not had hardly any tornado warnings in the state of Kansas. I probably just jinxed us, but
Of course you did. Plus we've
but I'm just saying we've gotten this far in the year and we have not had the catastrophic storms that.
No, and that's certainly, I think, again, I'm not going to speak specifically to EMC, but having worked with Wright Specialty before too, listen, what happens not just in Kansas affects insurance pricing. It's like kind of anything else. So, of course, if we have, insurance companies carry insurance too. They buy insurance for their insurance. So
that pool is just the state of Kansas pool, right?
this is just a Kansas pool, correct?
Okay. Well, because that could also go the other way. If we have a stormy season, then everybody's not doing so well in the pool.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for clarifying.
Can I say one more thing about that? Okay. Well, because it brings up things that I don't want to bring up unless he brings it up first. But so he said that the insurance has insurance. So in the state of Kansas, they are right now insuring over $3 billion worth of property, and they only have insurance to $300 million. So if you think about that, whenever there's going to be a loss, you guys could be assessed additional fees. So it could go down, but it could also go up. And that's the whole point of, that is the whole point of EMC, is the fact that it is a set price and it isn't going to change, in the fact that you don't change your insurance.
I have
So-
one other question for you.
Yeah.
You said that we are not in a contract with you, or with that
No.
other company, right? So,
It's like your homeowner's insurance.
so can they dump us at any time?
Can they? Yeah, of course.
They can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then there's only these two options for
But they can't just
insurance, is that correct?
Yeah,
Tanya?
but they can't just cancel you in the middle of a term. So they can't do that, just like your homeowners can't. I mean, if I were to get notice of a cancellation because you guys had two $50 million claims, then you're probably gonna see that, just like you would see everything else happen on the other side of that coin with the other insurance carrier. I mean, you're gonna see your rates go up, or you're gonna see a cancellation, or what have you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of like, your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance when you have claims.
Very well. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think this is what gets us down to what we're talking about here. It makes it hard when there's two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then my next question, my follow-up, and I'm going to be done, I promise. So if there's just those two and we could be dumped, can you get into the pool at any time? Or is it just this one time of the year that they accept people?
It's a good question for
You guys are getting your steps in tonight.
I'm really sorry.
No, these are great. This is really important, and those are really great questions. And I know you guys are probably tired of us kind of coming back up and forth. There is no doubt, similar to, I'm sorry, what was your name?
That's okay, it's Sarah.
Sarah, similar to what Sarah said, there's no doubt that any insurance carrier, based on how you perform, can non-renew you. I mean, you guys have performed fairly well with Wright, except for some shock losses, and they non-renewed the entire state. So the pool is sponsored by KASB. They want to be a border-to-border solution for every school. So for KASB, it was important when partnering with the pool that, similar to the work comp, you would always be able to get a quote from the pool. I think that was an important, very important thing for KASB. It renews July 1st every year, which is when your renewal is now, and you won't get canceled in September per se. They would wait until the end of the policy term, at which point we could certainly price you guys coming back into the pool. Very similarly, I mean, you would be non-renewed likely because there were bad claims, and that would be a whole nother actuarial calculus, and you'd miss a year of potential large dividend savings, and there's a whole host of different things that that could affect that. You know, we kind of, with the Wright specialty non-renewal this year and how the pool was structured, all of the carriers kind of, because it was such a moving target on how many districts would be joining, kind of gave, I don't want to say carte blanche, but they kind of opened it up and really are trying to grow the membership as quickly as possible. I think probably in future years for districts with adverse claims, it's probably going to be viewed a little more stringently. You know, the board of CRMIP is school superintendents across the state. So they, you know, we submit, they price it, and then every single district goes to that set of superintendents for review and approval for CRMIP membership. So there have been districts that have had adverse losses, not specifically in property, because we've talked about the difficulty in risk mitigation for property claims, where there have been instances of the pool not providing membership, has been districts where they've had adverse liability claims, where there's something kind of not going right at the board level or at the leadership level, that there hasn't really been an insistence on changing. So multiple kind of sexual abuse and violence type of claims and things of that nature. So
I see.
I think I kind of answered your question, but you know, at the end of the day, the pooling kind of philosophy, you kind of buy in or you don't. And I think most of the states around us have had pools. You know, Gallagher's been administering pools for 60 plus years. So it's an important decision. I'm glad you guys are asking questions. You can kind of keep firing away.
Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate
Thanks.
it. All right, members of the board. Dr. Krebs, did you have anything else before we?
No, I think the only thing that I would say is that really either option is a sound option for our district. They're going to take care of us from an insurance standpoint. Both of them are expensive. There's a lot of money to be spent here today. But I think you have to weigh several of the things that are there. Again, both of them have been great to work with. Eric, we've worked with CBiz for the last few years. Porter was our liability insurance carrier prior to Wright, I believe. So we've done business with both, and both of them have taken care of our district as well as we could expect. There are dividends from both. There are expected drops in the loss piece of this from both. It is difficult to say exactly what those will be because they are all dependent upon an unknown of basically this notion that we wouldn't have any additional claims this year, and we just don't know that will be the case. One is $30,000 cheaper than the other, and a local option. I think that always plays an important part in the decision making of our board, at least it has in the past. Therefore, my recommendation would be that we utilize EMC through Porter Spears, but I do want to make sure that Eric knows how much I appreciate the work that he's done and the work that CBiz has done with our community. But ultimately, it is the board's decision to determine exactly where we go with liability insurance at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Cobbs. At this time, would any member of the board like to make a motion?
Madam President, I would like to make a motion that we go with EMC through Porter Spears and Bundy with the increase of 20 million, I believe it was, that for a premium of $293,733.
Would that be $295,704?
More than the email that I sent out this morning.
Oh,
It was an
okay.
estimate this morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
95.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
So it was moved by Chris Cunningham and seconded by Linda Alderman that we accept the bid of, or the amount of, with Porter Spears and Bundy for $295,000, $295,704. We're going to do a roll call vote so that those that are watching tonight can see where we're at. So we'll just start at this end over here. Shanda Olmsted, just say yes or no.
Yes.
Yes.
Cunningham? Linda
Yes.
Alderman? Julie Dandrio, yes. Melidia Payne?
Yes.
Susan Ward?
That's a tough one. For me, it comes down to whether I'm risk averse or not, and whether we have an insurance product or incur some risk. And so I guess it's a lot of money either way, and so I probably am a no.
Okay. Harold Wingert?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes 6-1.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Eric,
Thank you both for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So we are moving on down here to section 5.02. The OHS track makes its rounds again. Last time we had a tie vote whenever there was a motion made, and Dr. Cobbs and the board decided to bring it back to make some final decisions tonight. Dr. Cobbs?
There's no new information here. I think you guys have had it before. I think we just need to make a decision. Last time it was tied, which ultimately rendered a no decision, and I don't think that that was the intention of the board to have no decision on it. So brought it back with 7 members present to make a determination moving forward.
Great. Would a member of the board like to make a motion?
Madam President, I have had the opportunity to watch this board and be on this board for literally decades now as a teacher leader and as a board member. I also was given the opportunity to be on the Vision Committee, which set forth the vision for this district, and that Vision Committee was made up of community members. Not teachers, not administrators, but community members. And from all of those discussions, through the decades of listening to people on the board and being on the visioning committee, I know that the patrons of this community want our facilities maintained. That's the bottom line. And they also want it done right the first time. I've heard that over and over again. Why didn't you do it right the first time? I also admire Terry. She does an outstanding job managing our financial resources. Our auditors that have come through every year have had nothing but praise for how Terry manages our district. She has gotten us through some pretty tough financial times. When other districts have been worried about where they're going financially, we weren't flush with money, but we were sound, and knew we were on solid ground because of the way Terry had managed our funds. If she says we have the money to do this, we do. If we didn't have the money, we could not pry it from her cold dead hands. That's just the way it is. So if she says that we have the money to spend, I believe her. And therefore, I move that we spend no more than $431,000 to fix and replace and repair the track with the company is Mid-America.
Madam President, you had Harold over there waving too, right as Linda started to talk.
Okay. Well, is there a second before I hear from Mr. Wingert?
Second.
Okay, it has been moved by Linda Alderman and seconded by Susan Ward that we do a complete track replacement or repair for no more than $431,000. We will open up for discussion. Harold, did you have something?
Yeah, so here's my position on it is, I've been contacted by several people and I think that we need to do something, on the track, but because there's a motion on the floor, I'm going to respectfully vote no. But then I have a proposal, that, I'd like to talk about, but I'll respect for the motion on the, floor. I'll save the rest of my comments to see how this motion goes and then make a motion after this one.
Okay.
Can I ask, is this motion going to, I guess I asked you, Dr. Cobbs, is this this 431,000, does this get our jump pits and everything incorporated or no?
No, it does the high jump pit, which is the back end of the track, but it does not do anything that is on the north side of the stadium. So there are 3 lanes that go to the pole vault pit and the 2 long jump pits. I had a conversation with Mid-America today. Those lanes are different than the track. There's actually a rubber overlay that does not connect to the concrete. You can actually pick them up and move them. So I asked the question of Mid-America today what it would cost to replace those and make them right. And he said without giving you an absolute, it would be less than 10 grand. So it's not a huge additional cost to address those areas as well.
Chris, I appreciate you asking the question.
Well, I just think if we're going to entertain doing this, and to piggyback off what you say, do it right the first time, maybe we need to look at our motion to
amend
well, or
to a higher amount.
well,
to
or to
accommodate
make sure
this.
that we put the shining touch on the last major construction project for hopefully a while for all of us.
Yeah.
And make sure that we have everything. Just a second, Harold. Make sure we have everything inside the fence. Make sure our scoreboard is not ready to go kapoop, or make sure when we walk out of the fences with construction, we're done for a while. That's all I was saying.
And
Sorry, Harold.
I would be open to a friendly amendment that would incorporate that.
Okay.
Are you making a motion of an amendment of her?
Well, do we know that the 10,000? He says that, but I
Yeah.
just.
So those things, there are a couple of things that Chris brought up that we probably need to address. One, the scoreboard at the high school was on the football field was replaced maybe about 10 years ago. It is LED. It is newer. The scoreboard on the soccer field I think has been there since the soccer field was put in place. It's still a light bulb style scoreboard. And if we wanted to address that, certainly that would be something to address. I guess if we wanted to make an amendment to the original motion, I guess what I would ask the board to do was at least look at the original motion, knowing that we'll come back with a change order to address the 3. But I think that it'll be, he indicated to me that it would be less than $10,000, somewhere around that.
So we
that
could
area.
address that at a later date.
You could if you wanted to, if that was the case, or you could simply give some latitude. So we're coming up against some time considerations here. Waiting another 2 weeks to start the process for all of it would be another 2 weeks down the road. If we wanted to recognize that there was an ability to get, I have a $20,000 threshold for the superintendent to make decisions about contracts. If the change order is truly less than $10,000, then I would have the wherewithal to be able to make that decision immediately and say, yes, let's fix those and add it to the original contract without having to come back to the board based upon my ability.
I was just trying to piggyback off what Linda said. Like,
Yep.
if we're going to try to make this right for the student athletes and the community, and I think law enforcement uses the track, then let's make sure we get it
Yep, let's get it right.
all done.
I
Correct.
would agree with you, Chris.
But
Yeah, thank you.
Harold is from-
Harold, did you have a comment?
I guess my thought is that we need a holistic approach. You know, here we are, we spent $63 million and we built a state-of-the-art facility in high school and elementary schools, and we added on to Garfield. And I think from my perspective, and in talking to people that, you know, I think we need just more than yes, Dr. Cobbs, I talked to you this morning about the long jump, the high jump, triple jump, but also I think we need to talk about the security, the fencing, the lighting, close, if we're going to do video cameras. And then I also think we need to solicit input from our OMS, OHS, track and field professionals. So I guess what I'm thinking is that I'm fine with the basis of the Mid-America design. What I'd like to do is see a much more robust proposal. And, you know, we talked this morning, Dr. Cobbs, that 2 or 3 weeks is 2 or 3 weeks, but the other side of the coin is I'd rather spend 2 or 3 weeks, get it right, get it fully robust, and then we can move to forward there versus keep coming back and doing this or that or the other thing. So I think out of respect to the current motion, we either ought to vote it up or vote it down, and then either come back and then say, you know, do we want to go for a total package, including any equipment we need, pole vault landing equipment, things like that. So that's my thought. My thought is let's bring it into the 21st century.
Yep. So I have Mrs. Whitaker here, and I think we can address a couple of things. One, safety and security would be something that we would have Dean bid out because it certainly wouldn't go through Mid-America. It's not their purview in terms of camera systems and those types of things. But Dean can certainly work on the safety and security and go through a similar S2 system than what we currently have and how our cameras are set up so that all of those systems talk to one another. For the most part, our track equipment is fairly new. If I remember right, Mr. Graff, we talked to Coach Miller today. I think his main concern is he would like to see the track redone and take care of the issues with the track, and would like to see the 3 lanes on the north side of the stadium addressed for the pole vault and the long jump pits. If we're also talking about fencing, then again, that would be something different from what we would do with Mid-America. We would probably go through a different bid process to address the fencing around both stadiums. If that's where the board is at. But ultimately, we can, if we want to make a decision about where we want to go with track, with the understanding that we'll go through a process to address fencing and camera systems and so on, and scoreboards. I heard that was in there. Then we can add those things to the scope of the conversation without adding them to the scope of this particular contract.
So this motion would get us started.
This motion would get you started.
And then we could then come back and discuss.
What I've heard,
More.
at least from 2 members, and it sounds like Linda would be on board as well, is that if we're going to redo the track, let's make it something that we can be proud of all the way around and address the issues that we would be addressing down the road to begin with as well. Fencing would certainly be a part of that. I've heard Shanda mention safety and security with cameras. Certainly that's a piece that we probably need to address, especially if we're going to spend this much money on turf and track and so on and so forth. Those things would all be tangential to the actual track contract. But if what I'm hearing is that we want to address those deals, we will begin to put out some RFPs and whatnot to address those things moving forward.
I spoke with a track coach today, and they stated that no one had reached out. You talk about talking to the experts,
Yep.
but they said that no one had reached out to them and asked them any questions or any input, and they didn't even know what the proposal included.
Yeah, so I don't know who you talked to, but I know
I've
that.
talked to the head coach this entire time, a lot in the last 2 weeks since the first board meeting when this was brought up. And Coach Miller and I had another conversation again today for about an hour and a half, and But Mr. Graff has had lots of conversations with Mr. Miller as well. We have not sat down with his assistant coaches. He has told us that he has spoken with some of them. It's not something that we had asked him to do, but we did talk with Coach Miller extensively throughout this whole thing regarding the track and
Because I would like to see the coaches, all of the track coaches, the cross-country coaches be considered and have them consult on this and have their ideas put in on the planning and let all of them say what we need. I mean, they're there for all the events and they know what we don't have or what lanes aren't working, that you can't use both ends because there's not enough distance because of the approach. And so things that were laid out in the original design does not work currently with what we have. So I don't want to just to redo what we have and spend all this money when it's not what we're for sure that we even need. So I would like to see us consult with the coaches on what they would recommend and then vote on that.
Any other discussion?
Won't they, though, I think to maybe help answer Melidia's question on the track size, I believe when they have to put the track back, they have to put it back to regulation, correct?
So all the conversations that we've had are about a regulation track. I guess I'm a little taken aback by our track not meeting their needs, as we've run numbers of events there, and it's never been brought to our attention. Maybe
I think it's the jumping pits potentially. I think the triple jump. We have a young lady who is going to be a freshman, I believe, and because of the way that she triples jumps and like she's been in the Junior Olympics and things, I think I've heard some concern about our runway not being big enough, but not as far as our track as regulation.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, it's the jumping area. The jumping area is what I'm talking about, how that we need to, and it's been talked about that other schools don't like to come here because track meets take so long because we only have the one jump pit and there can't be the girls' jump pit and the boys' jump pit and things like that are concerns. Maybe it's just going to be how it has to be because of what we decide, but I think that it's worth our time and their knowledge to consult them on all of these things.
so. There are two long jump pits. There are two of them.
But you can't use them both because of the approach, apparently.
Depending upon what, who we're hosting and what event we're hosting and then what events we choose to count during that, we can and can't. It just kind of depends on the outlay of the invitation or the track meet.
Chris, did you have something else to add on this?
Dr.
motion?
Cobbs, I don't want to forget about the throwers because I believe they throw outside the fence, right? Back that way?
They throw towards the west. Yep.
Yeah, like over where the little practice football field is. Is anything needed there?
Different throwers. So you have your shot putters that are north of the old entrance into the stadium. So they're kind of right there on the northern end of the stadium piece. And then you have your hammer and your discus and your javelin that are on the practice football field.
Yeah, I'm just making sure, like,
Yeah.
when we discuss this in its entirety, that we
Everyone's
don't forget
included.
about the throwers and just focus on the
So,
runners.
so Dean has it. You can see the two. So the kind of square here, I'll use this thing. The square thing right there, that's your pole vault pit with this lane to jump. These are your two long jump pits, two lanes.
And what I think what Melodia is saying, Ryan, is because you have to use the same runway for both of them, so it does slow down sometimes how quickly we can have girls and boys doing it. We have two long jump pits and two triple jump pits. It's just they use the same runway. They don't have
Same
separate
runway.
Yeah.
runway.
So you can't use it the way I think that the track was originally thought of, like we would have.
So do we think about
Okay.
adding a second runner?
So,
Amend to amend to.
as
amend.
I look at all this, my main motion concerned the actual track, that red circly thing there.
Right.
Okay, and that's what we need to replace while they are doing the turf. And then everything else we can talk about later and can be done later. But we need to get going on the track and the turf
So
now.
We will meet. We'll get with coaches tomorrow, if Mrs. Whitaker has some time, at least sometime this week, and identify exactly what's going on with the jump pits. It wouldn't be an outstanding cost. I mean, it's basically a sidewalk
Yeah.
and a sand pit. So it wouldn't be huge if we needed to add another lane over there to be able to improve
Okay.
the speed of what we're
Do
doing.
those folks use the rubber surface though? Would we want to put the rubber surface on that?
For
The jumpers?
the jumpers, yeah. And so a lot of people either have two things. You either have the same track surface that you utilize, or there are a lot of tracks that have the mat similar to us. They're not necessarily movable. Sometimes that material is, I'm going to say built into the ground. I don't know the technical term. But yeah, similar to what we have, or you utilize the track surface is what you see pretty standard at most jumps.
Because we could always ask them, couldn't we, Dr. Cobbs, to, hey, your priority is to get stuff inside the stadium done first.
Yeah.
Because they would have all the fall or whatever to get those
Yeah,
jumpers and
To
throwers.
work on what needs to be done outside the stadium.
Harold, did you have something else? Did I hear?
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with Mrs. Whitaker. I think that what I'm hearing is you can use the mat system for those jump lanes, but people prefer the same material as the track. And less maintenance. The mats catch by wind, mowers get them, things like that. So
Okay.
I think if we're going to do it, I would prefer that we do it right the first time and put down the same material that we are using for the mat and just be done with it from the get-go.
All right, so I'm going to pull us all back here because I think we're all getting excited here about taking a look at all these great things for the kids, because that's why we're all at this table, is for the kids. The motion on the floor is for the track, and it sounds like from the discussion that we would be interested in taking this vote, and if it proceeds, then taking a look at some of the other things, like Chris brought up, and other folks, supported, for those other throwing and field events. So,
That's correct.
is there anything else about this specific motion before we call a vote?
No, I was just bringing up those other things, like if we're going to take on one more project,
I agree with you.
let's make sure that
Agree.
in 2 years, and Dr. Cobbs, didn't know if the scoreboards were any issue, but if they're close on life expectancy,
Absolutely.
I don't want somebody coming back across our new turf or a new field or whatever, and I didn't know I know some people's stadium lights, I know OU may have just redone theirs in the last 5 years.
Our stadium lights are good. They're Musco
Okay.
lights.
Okay, well, I'm
They're
just,
Replaced them a few years ago.
okay, I'm just, that's one of those things that a lot of people forget about until they hit the light switch type of deal.
Yep.
Lydia, I'm
They're-
sorry, did you
they're-
have something
okay.
else?
Top notch.
Yeah. So what would it hurt if we waited till after we spoke with the coaches and got their input to see what we really need? If we waited to vote on it until after we spoke with the coaches and got that feedback?
Dr. Cobbs, would it help our current contractor if he knows now, because I was over there today for for driver's ed drop off, if he knows now that we're going to replace the track, would it help him accelerate his schedule by getting the dirt from the football field to the soccer field, knowing that he's not having to build all these ramps over it when he knows it's being replaced?
I think they finished the ramp today already.
Well, I was just trying to think of something,
Yeah.
the pros and cons of
Yeah,
the vote tonight.
I'd noticed that they'd taken the bridge off of the north side
Okay.
and moved it to the south side and taken so I think it's done already.
All right, I was just,
Okay.
it would speed him up.
So I think,
right,
Lydia,
so-
I think to answer your question, the coaches that we've spoken to at the high school in terms of the track itself, the regulation track, which is what we would be voting on, there seems to be a consistent desire to address the track in a regulation sense, which is what it is.
But I think there may be thoughts that we need to have another jump pit.
Yeah.
Not for the outside defense, like the high jump, if we had two high
Oh.
jump areas.
On either end.
Can you bring that up,
So
back up,
that,
Dean?
like, there would be a girls'
So you're
jump
talking
area
down in
and
the other
a
end zone?
boys'
Yeah.
jump area?
So if that's the case, if we
And like high school would be able to work on it and middle school would be able
Yeah.
to work.
if that's something that we wanted to do, one, it's going to change your turf bid because that area is being processed for turf right now. So if that's a decision that we want to make, then we probably need to meet with coaches fairly quickly and begin to have some discussions. It doesn't change probably the rest of it. It can be a change order to the scope that we currently have. But it is something that they won't be laying. Well, they might be. I'll speak with Mid-America tomorrow about how quickly they're going to be getting turf down, and what they're going to do in terms of the fill underneath our turf. If that begins to change, that would be the west end of the stadium begins to look like. But if we wait much longer, you're going to begin to have them doing things that they put in place that we pay for, that we're going to then pay for them to take out.
And that's where I was getting ready to say, Dr. Cobbs, like, right now, if we can head this off now, Lydia, and if this is something we want to do, is put jumping at both, I call it end zones.
Yep.
Right now, from what I witnessed today at noon pickup, they basically just have the black dirt stripped off. So we would possibly, I may be speaking out of term here, we'd possibly see a credit back to us for that turf area.
Yep.
But keep in mind, that money would then roll back into the surface area of the track.
Yep.
So it'd almost be a wash.
I was going to say, maybe they could trade us 1 for 1.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, they're not putting down a synthetic surface. They would just be laying additional asphalt and a rubber surface there. So I don't think if we get ahead of this enough that it would cost us terribly more.
Probably, we'd have to address the drainage issues there. There's going to be a great deal of runoff that exists because you now don't have an absorbent surface. But again, I can have all of those conversations tomorrow. We can kind of see where we're at, make sure that you all are informed of it in the update, and we can at least make change orders at that point if we need to.
So, Madam President, do you think we, and maybe you too, Linda, we can amend this to where kind of like these sub-points like Melidia's and getting the throwing and stuff Harold's talking about, but get the
I
track?
don't think we need to amend.
No.
I think that we can go ahead and vote on this, and then we know that we're going to get some more information, and we can bring that to the floor and vote on
Continue the
those as they come up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the way I see it as
And
well.
also, if we waited to vote on this, we would also, you put in your emails that we were supposed to hear about funding this week, correct? From the state?
Yep, 25th, 26th, 27th, 29th, I think, something
Because
like
we,
that.
Yeah.
I mean,
But this comes out of capital outlay,
I
which
know,
is
we've been
money
through
that we
this.
already
We've been through
have.
it.
So the funding's not going to impact this.
very
So,
well.
Madam President, I would like to call the question.
All right. Roll call vote. Shanda Olmsted, yes or no?
Yes, if we proceed with the next phase.
Chris Cunningham?
Yes, as long as we proceed with the added things that we've all discussed tonight.
Linda Alderman?
Yes, and I agree with them. Let's proceed with investigating the next phase.
Julie Dandrio? Yes, and I concur with those statements. Lydia Payne?
Without consulting our coaches and learning about our funding, I'm a no.
Susan Ward?
Yes.
Harold Winkert?
I'm a yes, as long as we address what we talked about to make it a 21st century state-of-the-art facility, including outside on the north side. So I'll say yes to keep it going, but I think it's very important that we address that. And then safety and security. Guys, we now have a $2 million investment that we can't just leave unprotected. So I think it's very important that we bring the camera system, the fencing system into play and protect our investments.
Thank you, Harold. Well said. And so that passes with 6 yeses and 1 no to completely overhaul and redo this track system, and we will bring the other points up later.
So I just want to make sure that I have everything that we want to address. We're going to talk about jump pits, possibly the addition of a jump pit or separation of jump pits. Look at the possible inclusion of a high jump pit on the west end of the stadium so that you might have 2 there. That we look at fencing, we look at safety and security, we look at scoreboards. Is there anything else that I need to address there?
When
Shanda?
you say scoreboards, you're also meaning the soccer field,
Soccer and
correct?
football.
Okay, that was mine. And also, high school coaches have been mentioned. Let's include middle school. Let's make sure we cover all bases at the middle school, whoever uses that track.
And-
Dr.
and
Cobbs,
I-
Yes, sir.
did you have triple jump, long jump, and pole vault?
Yes.
On that list?
Yep.
Okay.
As well as we'll also look at materials to make sure that they're right, whether our stanchions are right, pads are right, all of those things.
Right.
And Dr. Cobbs, can we
Right.
also make sure, like, if we make everything else look pretty, like, let's make sure, like, the throwing pits look, we don't just leave them
Yep.
old and maybe kind of freshen them up however everybody else is doing those type of throwing events. I mean, I look at some of the schools in our league, and this is like the last thing that we have not
Yeah.
put a paintbrush over, so.
And I would just want to say, like Melidia mentioned, with talking with our coaches, I know Mrs. Whitaker does a great job of, and has done a great job of communicating with them. As you visit with them, if there are things that we've suggested here and they're like, yeah, that's not exactly what we want or what we need, make sure that, even though this is our list, if there's other things that they come up with or things that we're not leaning the right way, we want that information.
If I could add one thing to this while we're having this discussion that I think is be a huge benefit, the demolition of the old concession stand that's sitting out there. If, Dina, you want to do there is an old concession stand.
So it's just like sitting there
That
empty?
thing right there. It is
It's a-
old,
yeah,
unused.
bad.
There's nothing that, I mean, can we at least
Can,
talk about part of this in terms of?
yeah,
I'm really good at demo.
well, I was wondering, is there anything that our C-Tech could learn from taking that apart?
Possibly. I might want to talk to our liability folks
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, I know, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm speaking from my construction knowledge that you learn the most when you take something apart.
All right.
I
Yep.
think Shanda had her hand up.
Shannon, did you have
Shannon,
something
sorry.
else?
Also, let's make sure both sound systems. Is the soccer?
Just this year. And that's actually, we've had Lawrence come look at our corner system.
So-
Stage budgeted for us.
So new this year then?
I think it was last year, late last year. Portable system that rolls out, brand new speakers.
Can't hear from the stadium. I can tell you that when we announced seniors last year, you couldn't.
In the football stadium?
No, soccer.
Soccer.
Maybe put some speakers on the poles.
We'll work through, we'll
Okay.
work through that.
Let's
We'll work
make
through.
sure we treat
Right.
the soccer just like we're doing track and
Absolutely.
football.
Equality.
All right.
Right.
Anything else? Track?
Okay, the last one on my list, Dr. Cobbs, I didn't want to interrupt anybody, is drainage. Have we addressed the drainage, French drain in front of the grandstand and where the water's been getting out into the track?
Yep,
Yeah, wasn't that part of it?
I believe it was part of the original bid.
Yeah.
We'll
Part of the
follow up
track
to make
bid,
sure.
I
Yeah, that's
believe.
part of it.
Yeah, but we'll make sure that it does happen.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
It's done.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, everybody.
All right. So we are done spending money tonight, but we do have some reports and presentations. Dean, Mr. Grell, would you like to come up and present your plan for purchasing Chromebooks? And again, this is just for information and discussion. There's no action tonight.
Correct. First off, it's freezing. We'll go through this anyway. We did come back with a proposal. We want to talk about Chromebooks for next year. Initially, we didn't, but we have a lot that are aging out, and we'll get into what's aging out and what that means here in a second. So current state, where we stand right now, we have 3,721 devices, but that covers Chromebooks, that covers digital signage, that covers our labs that have Chrome bases in them. And over 1 year, we have 3,009 active devices. And that's a rolling average, so it doesn't mean 700 are just sitting around somewhere, but it kind of does. So we have 750 of our Toshibas we bought the very first year we got Chromebooks that are end of life. They can kind of be used, but they kind of can't be used, and I'll get into that as well. But they are mostly sitting in a back room over here. If they need to go out, they can go out. We can use them tomorrow. But there's always a gotcha there, right? Okay, Chromebook licenses. We sat here a few months ago, and we bought a bunch of Chromebook licenses because they were upping the price on us. And we got a heck of a deal buying them. We bought 1,000 of them for $24 a piece before the price went up to $38 a piece. Great. We plan to use a bunch of them this year if we go through with this. The reason the price increased is because Google Chromebooks originally from the date they first left the manufacturer, were given about 5 years. They said, hey, 5 years is the life of this device. That's the lifespan of the device from the first one off the manufacturer's line. So if you bought one of those devices 3 years later, you don't get 5 more years, you get the 2. So it's the lifespan of the entire fleet that the manufacturer has ever built. Google has pushed that number now to 8 years. They want to see 8 years out of the gate because it helps us with keeping our fleet fresh. The device is more robust. The licensing is a little more expensive to cover that, but the gotcha is there's not a lot of those devices available yet. What does this mean? So AUE is auto update expiration. That's Google's term for these Chromebook upgrades. Once auto update expiration lapses after the 8 years or 5 years or whatever we see, they no longer automatically update for us to the latest version of Chrome OS. Chrome OS is the operating system just like Windows XP, Windows 2000, Windows 8. The only thing that means to us is any feature that Google rolls out in the next version of Chrome OS, sorry, you're behind me, those devices will not get or they may not get. Google's not very clear on that. We've only seen one feature that we did not get, and it wasn't even a big deal for us. But our 750 that are in our back room over here, they are past their AUE, so if there was some new, great, amazing feature, we have no guarantee we'll get it. The devices won't update any further, and they start getting slower. It's that planned obsolescence model that we see from Apple and the like. So usability after about 5 years old, the devices show their age. After 8 years old, they're going to show their age still, but we'll still get all these updates. We'll still have all the current stuff coming through. We'll still be able to use them, whereas these that we have right now, they report funny in our metrics because the way that Google reports that information back to itself, if that makes sense. The metrics that we gather from the fleet of devices is changed because of the operating system updates. And that last point is that parts are difficult to find. As the fleet gets older and older and older, it's harder to find parts. We can still find them, and we still do find them as we need them, but we find ourselves scavenging the old computers to fix the other old computers. So we have the 750 Toshibas. We probably pull apart 10, 20, 30, 40 every year to get the other ones to keep working. So harder to find parts.
Salvage yard.
And I will say that since then, we have been purchasing more of our fleet. So we'll buy a 10% pad on whatever we buy each year, and we take that 10%, give them to our high schoolers, and say, disassemble these. Brand new Chromebooks, tear them apart. 1, you learn how to take it apart. 2, it's cheaper. It's cheaper to have a Chromebook and tear it apart than it is to buy all of the individual pieces of a Chromebook. Much cheaper. So that brings us to device selection. This is what kind of hung us up for a little while. This is the Acer CB712, and this is an incredible Chromebook, and I want them so bad for our students. And we'll get there. But the Acer CB712 comes in 2 models, touchscreen and non-touchscreen. We've made a move to touchscreen. We've seen fewer screen breakages as a result because the touchscreen itself is more robust. They are incredibly robust because of the glass that they use to have that capacitive touch. A few months ago, this was the plan. And then COVID came around, and the touchscreen panels are nowhere to be found. You can find them, but Acer has said we cannot fulfill the amount of demand we're going to have for these touchscreen panels, so they don't offer them currently. They advertise them. We've asked 100 times. They're not selling them. They're not coming out. Why is this device great? You see this gentleman standing on one of them, and then if you see how far that screen is bending over there, that's a screen grab from a video. He then puts it down on the desk, and it works just fine. They also have a gutter system under the keyboard. I'm spending all this time talking about it. We're not getting them, but I'm going to keep talking about them. They have a gutter system under the keyboard. You can pour up to 11 ounces of water, if you measure it exactly, on the keyboard, and a gutter system will drain it through holes in the bottom. So we have spills every year. We have kids standing on their Chromebooks every year. We have kids breaking their screens just like that, holding that device by the corner and showing their teacher. Any admins want to testify to that? Kids always hold them by the screen. That's how they do it. So this was incredible. That amount of flex would get us a lot further than what we have now. It is one of the first military standards built Chromebooks. It is built to a stringent U.S. military standard. Spill proof we talked about, drop proof from 48 inches high. That one's not a big one for us. You'd think it would be, but we drop our Chromebooks off the second story of the OMS landing there, and they survive in our cases. So we've done that for the case manufacturer. They use our videos on their website. We like to drop Chromebooks to make sure that our parents understand that we're giving them this device, but it's going to kind of take the beating a little better than without it. They are future ready. They have a 10th generation Intel i3 processor, which is the latest we can get. When you get into the i series of processors, it's the real computing processor, not the Celeron. The Celeron's the cheap ones. The i3, i5, i7, that's what you buy in your power devices. Your Macs, your brand new Macs have the i9 in them. So the i series is really, really a good thing. Everyone's just going, I series, yes. Purpose-built, these are education-centric. Acer went out to all of these consumers and said, hey, we know what you need, tell us what else you need, and let's build this device perfect. That's why they did all this mil-spec standards. That's why they went through the spill-proof, because they want to hear the systemic issues that they're having in each of the buildings. The other issue that Acer has patented is they have the best hinge in the market. So our hinges will break sometimes. Acer is the only manufacturer that has a hinge from the base all the way to the top. We're talking a lot about Acer. Battery life, incredible, 12 hours. Let's keep going. Touchscreen's not available yet. Back to the drawing board. There are 4 devices currently that have an 8-year AUE, that auto update expiration. There are only 4 devices. None of them will work for us. One is the Acer 712 that's not touch. We don't want that one. We want touch. The Asus Chromebook Flip C436 is starting at about $1,000 a piece. We are at a fraction of that with our Chromebooks. The splitter's messing up. We'll fix it later. The Lenovo 10E Chromebook, 2 things. Number 1, if I bought Lenovo, the high school would revolt. Any teacher that was here when Dr. Cobbs was the principal at the high school. 70% failure rate, over 70% failure rate. Every device we had almost was sent back to Lenovo for warranty repair. When I got here, we were in the last year of it, and I got rid of the rest of them. If I bring back Lenovo, I'll be in trouble. Not to say they're not a great device, but it's that stigma, and it's hard to get away from that. But regardless of that, they don't have a keyboard. They're tablets only. Those would not be well received in our high school at all. Samsung Galaxy Chromebook is the last one, started $1,000 again. And their battery life is about 3.5 hours. We're not buying any of these 4. I wouldn't suggest at all. The Dell 3100 2-in-1. So this is what really changed. We were going to just wait until September and push off and wait for this Acer model to show up. The Dell 3100 2-in-1 we currently have. We've had it for a year. It's going through its AUE right now. It's 1 year in. But because Dell did not announce a flagship model for 2020, Google has also noticed what's going on in the industry, and they have said we're going to extend you 1 more year with your AUE. So our current devices that we have, we just got an extra year just like that. But if we buy them again this year, we have until June of 2026 before they hit their AUE date. So they added a year. That makes it advantageous for us because we really like this device. We've had it for 1 year. Our freshmen have it. We have the non-touch version for the 6th graders. So as you remember, last year was our first foray into the touch models for our high schoolers. A lot of these Chromebooks to see how they work inside. We have a bone pile of parts. We're ready to go. And we're not going to get to 2028, but we still have 6 years until we hit that AUE date. And that AUE date is moving. They will always add to it. They never take away from it. So next year they may give us another year, but they probably won't. They'll probably release a new device at that point. So how would we pull this off? If we decide to move forward with this, we'd publish our RFP tomorrow. We'd push it out and have a week for questions, 2 weeks for bids due, 3 weeks for it to come back here, or whatever the timeline is, for anticipated award. And then delivery is going to be what's going to set this project up for failure or success. Delivery date, what we typically do is we have a standard legal jargon in our contract for liquidated damages. And we say, here's our agreed upon delivery date. Every day past that, $500 in liquidated damages. We are proposing to remove that temporarily from this contract, kind of. We're going to amend it, not remove it, and say we want the manufacturer or the vendor or the third party to say, we want to deliver by this date. We'll set the date, and then we'll have that liquidated damages from that date. Because we have heard a lot about supply chain issues. We got another email yesterday from Dell directly that said, we have a lot of people lining up. We don't know what's going to happen. But if we have a contract that says, here's our date, you have to deliver by this date, or spend $500 a day if you can't hit that target, I think we're setting ourselves up for a very poor bid outcome and not a lot of responses. This is just an idea. If we want to do this, we don't have to. If we want to keep our protection in there, we can. I also think it'd be wise to have a date, like a cutoff date, by this date, and just kind of push them towards that and say, can you hit this date? Or have a question in the RFP that says, what date would you be able to supply it by, and not even talk about this. So we'll get there. Device distribution. This is what we would kind of divvy up. It's 451 devices if we do our math. But we take the enrollment that we see currently, we add them together, 6th and 9th, and then we pad by 10%. So we're not going to ask for 451 devices. We're going to look at 450. Again, that gives us padding for student student transfers, the loan of devices every day when kids have repairs they need to have done, and then our parts pile that we take from disassembling devices. Currently, 8th graders this year were told to keep their devices over the summer because we had no idea what we were in for. So we wanted to be able to come back to school day one. If we were remote, we'd be ready to go. If not, we'd swap them out with a new device. And that's the plan still. If we can't get device fulfillment until August, September, October, we'll still do this same path. Our students have their devices. It'll be a little trickier for the incoming 6th graders, but we can figure it out. Cases, we have gone both ways on cases. Last year was our first year, I believe, of the snap-on cases. So we have the full cloth cases. I don't see any in here. An always-on case, it's like a zippered pouch. Charger goes in the front. We moved last year to the snap-on cases, and we hear feedback from both sides. What we hear a lot of for the zippered cases is they're ugly. Now, that doesn't, we don't care if they're ugly. We don't want it, everyone has them. Everyone's carrying them. Yes, they're ugly, but they protect the devices. We can throw it off the second story of the middle school and they're fine. The other snap-on device, the snap-on cases, the minute we moved to them, we stopped hearing they're ugly because the kids could decorate and put a panel of paper, a piece of paper between the panels and decorate it however they wanted to. But then we started hearing we can't put them in our book bags, or we have to put them in our book bags. We can't carry them over our shoulder anymore. But then at the same time, we heard kids saying, I'm not going to carry it over my shoulder. I don't want this strap. I don't want this big bulky thing. So we're not going to win. But what I will tell you is that with the clamshells, and it may be skewed data because we also went touchscreen, but we see a lot less breakage, significantly so. And the devices come back a lot cleaner. The zipper cases, when we get done with them after 4 years, a lot of the times we throw them away. The plastic cases, you can still clean. They might have scratches all over them, but you can still clean them. We're not seeing stickers anymore. We're not seeing bedazzled jewels. We're not seeing... come see us after Chromebook collection and see the cases. It's wonderful. There's also... never mind. Okay, so history. Devices we've purchased. This is just to give kind of a history. We talked about this when we did the licenses, but this kind of shows you what we've been buying, numbers-wise, quantity-wise, and price-wise. The two white highlighted rows, those are the touchscreen only ones we've bought. We did give elementary staff 4th and 5th touchscreen as well. Those were the Acer devices that we've had tremendous luck with. Estimate, we expect prices to come down. We talked to Eudora. They got the same devices this year that we're looking at, and they're a lower price. So we bought them for $297.26 last time we bought them, and they, again, we expect them to come down because they are an older 1-year device, but we also don't know with the supply chain issues, supply and demand, that price could go up as well. So Eudora's seen it come down. They were below, I think they bought the non-touch, but they were at $199 for the non-touch. And we bought the non-touch last year, if you look at the very last row, for $233. So coming down a little bit. Cases, $32.39. That's probably going to be a static case. They pump those out in tremendous numbers. And we do not need to purchase licensing this year. So that's a great savings because we already did. That's not a savings. It's just a previous cost that we took care of. Are there any questions? Should I go over parts slower? Yes.
I guess I look at it, and you can tell me why I'm right or wrong, but why wouldn't we try it? Because we bought 1,000 licenses, and we had, I think, 750 at end of life. So maybe do 500 devices?
What I would tell you is that 750 was the first purchase for the high school, and they hit all 4 grades with that. Well, they bought 750 and then 70 more, but they hit all 4 grades at once. What we don't want to do is hit all 4 grades at once, because then 8 years from now we have to hit all 4 grades at once again.
Yeah, I was just reminding you where I came from.
Gotcha.
Like several meetings ago when I said I wanted to try to get where we...
More devices.
Well, I wanted to try to get where we
licenses.
have the elementary...
Yep.
And all the way through, and I think you may have talked last time where we could get to where elementary till they ran to 5th grade. Then obviously we don't want kindergartners with this,
Yes.
or maybe not even 1st graders.
And our plan for that kind of changed back and forth, so we're kind of revisiting this. Our plan was next year to double up and get the 5th, 6th, so we get back on a 4-year schedule for 5th through 8th, and then 9th through 12th.
Right.
We deviated away from that temporarily because of the supply chain issues. We were going to just say, wait, let's just wait and see what happens. We have devices. We can use those Toshibas. But now with the Acer not coming out, that kind of delayed us a little more. And then with the Dell saying we have one more year of licensing, or one more year of life left, we're proposing to move forward with that Dell. Can we buy more? We sure can. But I don't want devices sitting around.
I understand. I was just, I guess, especially now after we've went through a pandemic and seeing that we can educate our children when we have to from remotely. It would be nice eventually if we get to a point where we have elementary on a cycle, they hit middle school, they start another cycle. So a student would be like on a 3-cycle deal. They would have eventually 3 devices in their school lifetime, to where if we run into those issues of a kid can't come to school for a period of time, that they have a device, even if they're in elementary, that we can communicate with them and send them stuff.
And we do have that kind of tentatively sketched out. The advantage there is that when you have your, let's say, 1st through 4th devices, they're not going to have the wear and tear. They're going to be in their shelf at all times. They come out for certain times of the day and they go back in. Now, they will have wear and tear. I say to an elementary classroom teacher that has seen the wear and tear that happens in that classroom. But we've seen our devices come back after, we used to take them back every year. We'd pull, 6th grade, you have them for a year, let's collect them, let's redistribute them for 7th grade. Those devices go through a lot. So our plan would be then to hit our 1st through 4th. I think our pre-K and K, it's kind of a different device. So we might have the tablet, maybe not a Lenovo tablet, but maybe a tablet. We've had that feedback that maybe that tactile touch as opposed to a keyboard might be a better solution. We're still exploring that. We still have plans for that. And then once we get our 5th, 6th device double ups, we have 5th through 8th, 9th through 12th. Our next step would be let's push into the elementary. So we have 3 different rotations, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I just think you see now more, I can speak for having a 5-year-old at home, how good they are at touch screens and can navigate stuff. And I'm like, how did you do that?
Yep.
And I was sitting home, just to give a quick example, the other day, and all of a sudden she took her tablet and she was on my TV, and I'm
Right.
like, how did you do that? So I just know that that's becoming more of a thing, like where I see us in the future needing that in the elementary level as well.
And I think our other opportunity is that with COVID, we need to make sure, and we're already doing this, I'm pretty sure all the way across the board in elementary, but that students are getting the same device. So they go up and they get device number 16 today.
Yeah.
They get device number 16 tomorrow. And that if they are sick and we decide to send a device home, we send home device number 16. We have a new management platform we're looking at for Chromebooks that allows tracking. It also allows parent interaction. So the minute a kid drops off a device for repair, they generate the ticket goes home. So the parent gets an email and says, hey, your device has been dropped off for repair, your student's been given a loaner, here's the loaner serial number, here's your turned in serial number, here's a picture of the damage, because that's been a big one for us. We've had to prove several damages, we've had to prove several damages and say this is how we received it. So the minute it comes in, they take a picture of it, it's uploaded to the documentation structure and sent out to the parents. When the repair is complete, they do the same paper trail to everybody. I think and I hope that will minimize some of our day loaners. At the high school, I know we have a lot of day loaners that go out in the mornings. Middle school has quite a few as well, but I know the high school, sometimes it's hard tracking all of the paper that's associated with 30 day loaners every day, or tracking down a kid, making sure a device gets returned. So that's another piece of this that we'll explore as we move further into the elementary and we kind of hone those policies and procedures so it's ready to go for the entire district.
Okay, so you'll see, I pulled up your deal
Yep.
of our numbers. So eventually, like, by next year, if we double up, then we'll be back north of that 3,000 devices mark, because obviously the 750 are going away.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
okay. Thanks, Dean.
We'll get there. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Jamie.
Yes.
And we
Oh,
did
Harold's
great-
got his
oh,
hand up.
Harold.
Harold's got one. Yes.
So this past year when we went to continual learning remotely, I heard challenges with the upperclassmen's Chromebooks not keeping up with speed and all that. is there any thought that, do we need to upgrade any of the junior or seniors Chromebooks, or is that just help refresh and clean up so they run faster? What's your thought on how upperclassmen, their Chromebooks now are approaching 3 or 4 years old?
So that's a great question. I think the 3180 that they are on, I'm not sure of the AUE, the auto update expiration date on those, but we are getting close to it. What I would say is that the device itself, we have if you envision your home computer, you can reformat and reload Windows on it and make it fresh. Make all your data disappear. It'll be brand new, ready to go. If you take that to like a computer repair shop, that's like a 4-hour process. It takes a lot of time. Our kids at the Genius Bar can do it in less than a minute for Chromebooks. It's a few keystrokes, and they have to re-enroll the device. We can push education to those users and say, hey, if you have slowness or you're seeing issues at home with X, Y, and Z, bring it to the Genius Bar. Let's reformat it. Let's go try this first. There are additional steps we can do performance-wise. Most of the issues we see with sluggishness in Chromebooks is one of two things. It's one, way too many tabs open, which takes up a lot of resources, and people don't like closing tabs. And two is the website they are using. So, for instance, and this is kind of a big thing for us, Zoom itself. Zoom as a platform consumes a ton of resources. So if a student wants to use Zoom as their classroom communication tool and then have a tab or 2 tabs open, those older Chromebooks are going to have issues with that. When we start talking about processing power, and I talk about the Acer and the i3 processor, that processor is built to have all these tabs. It's a multi-threaded processor because it can do a lot of different instructions at once. We'll get there, hopefully, when they release us a touchscreen device. What we can also do is we can increase our price point of the Chromebook. So our $297, $250 average that we see is a classroom Chromebook. You can buy any level of Chromebook. So if we start seeing a lot of issues with speed, we have districts around us that spend $900 for MacBook Airs for each of their students. I don't think we need to get anywhere near that. These are plenty sufficient for web browsing. We have kids streaming videos on them. We have kids that watch Netflix on them when they want to. We can account for all of that with the device that we're purchasing. And I do believe that this 3100 2-in-1, it's been an awesome device for our students. Just in terms of speed and durability, it's the fastest device we've ever had. But again, like you mentioned, those upperclassmen, they don't have that device. They have the 3180, which is kind of an older generation model. I can pull up that auto update expiration date and see how close they are to it. I think we have, I'd guess, 2 years left on it. But again, as you start getting towards the end of that date, they're going to be more sluggish. They're going to show their age.
And don't forget, Dean, the Genius Bar, those kids are free.
Those kids work for free. They will reformat
Like
for
to
free.
tell us that.
They do. Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dean. I
Thank you.
always put a lot of time and detail into your presentation, so you can explain all this to us, and we appreciate it very
Try to
much.
explain
Thank
it,
you.
because I can't ever get all the thoughts out of here.
Yeah, you start getting a little almost geeked out a little bit and go over me, but I appreciate that about you. It's just, I'm like, okay, you need to slow down a little bit.
All right. So up next, we are moving to the first read of the handbooks. And we have our principals here tonight who are going to present some of those changes. Who would like to come first? Mr. Stoltenberg? Yep.
And I will try to be quick. We have 4 changes here. The first and probably most consequential here is we revamped our eligibility policy. This is in accordance with both teacher and parent and student feedback. So what we have found is that the previous policy wasn't really accomplishing the goals that we were hoping it was, didn't actually incentivize kids to complete the work, because once they found themselves on a list, they were essentially on the list for the entirety of the week, regardless of whether or not when that work was done. So we took a look, our building leadership team took a look at the high school policy and kind of worked through that and kind of made it work to where we are, what we felt like was going to meet the needs for our kids. So We'll run the list now on Wednesdays, which gives time over weekends for teachers to get assignments in. So we feel like that'll be a little bit more accurate instead of just doing Monday morning, first thing, carte blanche. Once we are on the week, we are no longer doing the three-tiered system. You're either on the list or you're off the list. So you either have an F or you don't. Once you're on the list, the student and their parents are notified. That student then has some options to get that rectified. And as soon as they do, they will be taken off the list and then be deemed eligible for whatever activity is there. So it incentivizes students to actually complete the work or try to mitigate whatever it is that we see. We also wanted to try to streamline it to make it a little bit more similar to what the high school will be utilizing, so kids are ready for that. I can go through all of them, and if you guys have questions at the end. The other three are really just kind of minor things. We wanted to make the cell phone use policy reflect what has actually been utilized, which is that our cell phone use in the classroom is subject to discretion of classroom teachers. The discipline matrix, we added in conjunction with the high school the coding of assault under a level F to a level F, which is essentially taking a look at giving a little bit more leeway for administrators to deem if any one particular action was something that warranted going all the way to level F instead of just being seen as fighting. That gave us a little bit of leeway there if we needed to. And then we have added the online virtual Ottawa virtual learning program handbook to the back of our page, which is also there with the high school. So. And Ms. Whitaker can probably talk a little bit more about that as she was more involved in the creation of this. But because we do have students that are subject to the OVLP, we wanted to make sure it was part of our handbook as well. Any questions?
I had a couple things.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the first sentence that you got that's yellow at the top, I wonder if you don't want to switch that around. I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but I guess it sets you up for well, my kid was eligible, but your kid wasn't because my kid's going to be the quarterback and your kid's only a bench warmer.
Sure.
So I was thinking if you put like CASHA guidelines are based on CASHA guidelines, this will be enforced or explained by the principal or whatever.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah,
So
and
it
that
takes it out of the soup, I guess.
Oh, sure. I appreciate that. No, that's actually taken directly. That's the way the high school had theirs written, so that's why we just tried to be as consistent as we could. It came from CASHA, but that's certainly something we could take into account. I mean, at the end of the day, the list is run just as a skyward running of students that have Fs, and that's when you generated being on part of that list. But no, I appreciate that.
I don't know. And then the other one was the technology requirements on page 3 of 5. We had discussed potentially making some help. I wondered if we needed to add somewhere in there about if you do need help with internet connectivity, because we had talked about, hotspots or some ways that Dean or his crew could help out, and so just making it known that we have that as an option. I don't know. Maybe,
Okay.
and if it isn't an option, I'm just thinking for kids, when I look at that, I'm overwhelmed as like an adult who doesn't do this all the time. So, I don't know. I just thought we had talked about even making internet available for everybody, and how do we do that at one point, and do we need to, anyway, that was all.
Okay. Thank you for the feedback.
Dr. Cobbs, didn't we talk about that with some of our COVID money, trying to figure that out?
Yes. So
I think that's what Susan's talking about, right?
a lot more difficult than I think we'd ever intended.
Bummer.
Yeah. It seems like a really great idea and one that shouldn't be that difficult. The reality is that the contracts to host a network go through other people, and subsequently we would have to engage them in an opportunity to provide a contract, which doesn't seem like there's a lot of people willing to do. So we continue to work on this. And one, it would be awesome, right? If we could honestly say, hey, look, we have free internet. Free is a relative term. We can provide internet access for every one of our kids. That would be a huge benefit to our district. It is becoming more and more difficult to make it a reality. And you saw the guy geeking out up here earlier. I mean, the guy can do a lot of things. We haven't been able to move forward with this one yet because there's a lot of red tape and a lot of hurdles to jump through. But
Okay, thank you.
yeah, we'll continue to work on it.
Any other questions for Mr. Stoltenberg?
Mr. Stoltenberg, so even the student athlete could become eligible even on game day if
If they can, if
He
I
or she
haven't, yep,
gets-
that's part of what we wanted to do.
I just want to make sure I read that
Yep.
right.
Yep, that's part of what we wanted to do, is we recognize that this gives that student the opportunity and the incentive to try to do the right thing. And really what we want them to do, we want our kids to participate in activities. We want them to be academically eligible, and we want to make sure we provide those. So as long as we get some kind of communication saying that, yep, this grade has been updated, they will be eligible day of.
Thank you.
Yep.
Stolberg, you might want to address the OMS activities handbook remains the same.
Yep. The only change to OMS Activities Handbook was the year on the front.
Okay. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, Mrs. Whitaker, OHS changes? And by the way, I am so appreciative of having just these pages that just have the changes. That makes it very
Does that make it easy?
wonderful.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. Kind of, when Charlie is talking about the eligibility policy, we would have looked at that last year with the school board. And I do want you to know that on top of Cyclone Hour, that eligibility policy has also done wonders for our students. We find them utilizing that time in the middle of the day to go and find that teacher and make up that assessment or turn that homework assignment in or whatever that is, and taking more ownership and accountability for their work, because before their name would get on that list and it was almost doom and gloom for 2 weeks until it was run again. And this gives them some power and some control to be able to change that eligibility and be able to participate and get back to practice, get back on the stage and the PAC, whatever that is for that student. So we have seen it's been awesome. Our staff was a little hesitant about it, but it has not created the issues that we thought it was going to create. And so it's been a great addition to our handbooks for our students. The first part of the changes you see for us, previously we just had 4 little statements about the different alternative programs that are offered through the high school. And Ivy Briggs has done a fantastic job of going through our OLC program and the Ottawa Virtual Learning program to really just come up with what do parents and students need to know if those become options for their students or options that they choose. It used to be in its own separate handbook. It was really difficult to find on our website, not because of anything we did. It's just that it was another place a parent had to go to navigate to find information. So we thought it would be better if we put more concise information together and put it in one spot for families. The other thing, we have really worked hard over the past 2 years, and especially this last year with Mrs. Briggs, of making especially those OLC students and our OLVP students still feel a part of the high school. Even though they go over there because their learning needs to look different, we still encourage those kids to take electives in our building. We encourage those kids to come before and after school, to go to our dances, and to do all the things that they can as long as they are eligible to do so. And so by putting it in our handbook, it also, we feel like, is another sign that you really are still an Ottawa High School student. And then it allows us to play off the policies that are written in our high school handbook as well. So there doesn't have to be a separate discipline policy in the OLC or the OLVP handbook. It makes it more streamlined, so students and families know what our expectations are for all of the students that attend Ottawa High School, no matter what program you participate in. And then our bell schedule had to change slightly. This was a negotiated agreement item. We had to take 5 minutes out of the academic day. So the only thing that's changing is Monday through Thursday. And Dean, if you scroll up just a little bit, you'll see really what is affected is Cyclone Hours, where we decided to take the 5 minutes from. It made sense to us. Can't really take 5 minutes evenly out of 7 periods. It created a lot of kind of funky classes. And so we just took the 5 minutes out of Cyclone Hour, thus adjusted period 5, 6, and 7. This allows periods 1 through 7 to all be the exact same amount of time, which if you talk to a high school teacher, that is extremely important, because we might think, oh, well, if 4th period's 1 minute less than 5th period, that's no big deal. But over time, it's a significant amount of time, and it does cause that class period to get behind or ahead of the other ones. So we did that to the bell schedule. And then this is something that is in our handbook as well as our curriculum guide. And so we want to make the adjustments in our handbook, and then we would come back to the school board when we do our curriculum guide later this fall. But we no longer really call it, it's not really trigonometry, so we wanted to add the word pre-calculus to be more fitting to what we offer. The other awesome thing is we've been able to offer offer college biology the past year because Mrs. Steinball has joined our staff at the high school, and she has the credentials to do that through Neosho Community College, as well as offering chemistry too. There, we have a new staff member that's joining us that may give us the ability to also offer college chemistry in the future. And so really, when you look at those science credits for those advanced, or any of our honors, by the way we had it worded before, it would limit a student, that it would basically say they couldn't take college biology, nor could they do chemistry 1 and 2 to satisfy those science classes. Really, what we want students doing is engaging in our most rigorous classes, and that's physics, chemistry 1 or 2 in our college biology class. The other change, Dean, go right back up there. In math, under the summa cum laude, we always had that it had to be calculus. We've had a couple students challenge that. One of our students this past year that was a Governor Scholar, he did not take calculus. He took college algebra and statistics because in his major that he wanted in college, he didn't need calculus. And so he needed that college algebra and those statistic courses. And so those are still rigorous courses. We don't want to discount the fact that not everybody needs calculus to be successful with what they want to do. So we wanted to say that those 3 units of math can include calculus or our college algebra and statistics courses as well. And then, like Charlie had stated, we looked at adding the SALT to the level 20 of the behavior chart. It would keep us consistent together. And then this next change is actually a change that I serve on the CASHA, the board of directors, and this was something that we voted on this spring. A lot of schools are having issues with students with electronic nicotine devices, and so what they did is rather than schools calling them vape pens or calling them hookah pens and maybe us missing some of the new terms that come out there, they're just calling them electric nicotine delivery systems. And then in the note that they wanted us to add into our handbooks, they are describing what that could be. And it really opens up the window to pretty much, in my opinion, fit anything that a student might be utilizing. This was not something that CASHA, we would do something as a school which would cause our students to have some consequences with athletics. It was not something supported by CASHA until this spring when our board of directors passed this. So this is added in this handbook, and then I believe Brad updated it in the activities handbook as well. And for some reason, I just added the athletic activities handbook. We had the handbook named wrong, and so I wanted to correct that so it's not confusing for families. And then if any questions that you all have about the changes.
I don't have any questions. I just would like to commend you for making the change for the electronic nicotine delivery system. I think that's very important and something that our school district should be focused on.
Thank you.
I'm glad we've changed from the calculus to statistics.
Yeah.
Because some of us are well adjusted, although we don't try to show it. We never took calculus,
Yes.
so I just want you to know.
Yep.
That's a good thing.
Absolutely.
I like where you explain the alternative programs. It was clear, concise, and I appreciated that.
Yes. Click on that. Let me see.
Which one are we going to now?
I don't think there's anything other than the, yes, the year. And then I think the only major change again was the nicotine delivery devices, and that was something that Keisha changed. We did update our clubs and activities because there were some clubs that have been added. We had some new staff members last year. Chess was brought back to life. Robotics was new to the table, and so I know Mr. Graff added and updated some of those. And we hope to continue to see that list grow for our students. And then I really think that was it. I think so. I think it was only those two changes. Yep, and there's the electronic nicotine delivery device systems. And again, that was a state mandated change. And then here's it again, because it is also in the contract that the students sign when they choose to participate in a club or activity.
Great.
And that was it.
Thank you very much.
You are
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you.
All right. Shannon, are you going to present to us on the SPED changes?
Yes, and
Oh.
as Susan said, they are very riveting, and I'm sure that if you've looked at the change page that Mr. Robinson has sent to you, I believe it's 8 pages long, so I'm pretty sure you don't want me to go through line by line with you the changes, but I will tell you kind of how we've come to have so many changes. Our handbook was very extensive prior to now, and we would get questions from staff like, where do I find the answer to this? Well, it's on page 76 of the hand. I mean, it's very difficult to maneuver. And so one of our goals was to make it more practical for staff to actually be able to find the information that they need. The other goal of ours is to add more of our special education information to our district website. Right now, you won't find a lot on there, and if you do, it's very many clicks to get to where you want to be. So what we're doing is we are pulling out some of the pieces that were in our handbook that we feel parents should be able to see, and some of the things that were in the handbook are going to go on the district website. Some of those things in the changes that you'll see are simply some wordsmithing or taking a staff member name out and instead putting a role in there like the MIS clerk. We figure that if a staff member quits or retires or whatever, instead of changing the whole handbook with names, it should really just have the responsibility, role and responsibility in there. The other things that you'll see throughout, really, we're making sure that our alignment was to the USD290 policies. So if it was already in the certified handbook, sometimes it repeated in the special education handbook, and so we removed it if it was already somewhere in USD290's policies. We also made sure that the KSDE process handbook, some areas you'll see have been replaced directly with what's in KSDE's, just to make sure that we're streamlining that and saying exactly what KSDE would have us to say. We've also created a team drive, so some of the things that were in our handbook, we've created into either checklists or forms or a whole separate document that then our entire special education team will have access to that team drive. And in the handbook, it may say, please refer to this particular document in the drive, and that way if we have changes, we can just update the document and they have the nice fresh copy, and we don't have to continually change the handbook or go through all 100 pages. So you'll see many of those changes are what's reflected here. The one addition that you probably have not seen before is page, it's listed as page 12, so you'll want to scroll back up, Dean. And it's about the COGAT, there, right there. The COGAT is something that we added this year. It is the Cognitive Abilities Test. And it is something that helps us in the evaluation process of a student that might qualify for gifted. And it's kind of a screener. You can use it as a screener, or you can give a full diagnostic. And so as we went through the year this year, we did utilize the COGAT with select students. Our gifted students already had been using it this year to give us kind of a baseline, and then we did use it for some evaluations of gifted students this year. And so as we went through the year with our school psychologist, with our gifted teacher, Mr. Robinson and I developed kind of a protocol as to how we use the COGAT to help guide teams. So that piece is brand new in here. Everything else is, it's changed or it's moved or it's been removed because it's been repeated somewhere. Any questions as you looked through all 8 pages of our changes?
Doesn't sound like we have any questions, but thank you. I can tell that you all spent a tremendous amount of time going through and revamping that, and I'm sure it was not riveting work for you either.
We spent an entire day with our school psychologists, so thanks to them for helping give us feedback and working through it together, because it was a little bit cumbersome. The other items that are listed up there that might be relevant, not on there, Dean, I'm sorry, where you were at, yeah. If you will open the JDC academic protocol, I can speak to that as well. JDC really sets their own rules at the Juvenile Detention Center. However, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to do is we are sometimes sent students at JDC who come from other districts. So for example, if we have a student that's coming from Central Heights and we are helping to serve that student at JDC, there are a couple of options. One, we can contact the home school and have them provide the assignments, the materials, and so that way if they're here for a very short amount of time, they can pick up when they go back to their old school. they can pick up very quickly with the assignments and the instruction that they're receiving there. Or we can have them start in online courses through our Plato. And so that was one thing that had not been really written down anywhere, but definitely a procedure that we want to make sure that we're following, because we want to contact those other districts and make sure that if they have materials and instruction that they want us to be providing, that we do that. Kelly, am I correct that Engage in JDC Handbook is now like an addendum? And so you will see some changes on there as well. We sat down with Ivy Briggs and revamped some of this as well. So if you'll scroll down a little bit, there's a few changes here and there. We just took out staff member names again, so the handbook doesn't have to constantly be changed with the names of people. And we've also added a social worker this year that will serve at the middle school and high school level. And so that social worker will be also providing services daily at Eugene Field. And so we wanted to make sure that that got put in there. You can keep going. I think the rest of this, the eligibility we changed to make sure that it matched the high school. And then things like meals and things were already listed in the OHS handbook. And so since we've added it as an addendum to that, we took out some of those things that, again, were repeated in the previous handbook. And I think that's about the end of those changes. Any questions about JDC or Engage? I'm sure Mrs. Whitaker can help me answer questions if needed. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is a lot of handbooks. I am going to talk about the EL program, if you just do the proposed changes. Mr. Robinson put in an extensive amount of work with this and has really streamlined our EL program process. He completely revamped the individual learning plan and developed guidelines to go with that so that we can be assured that any student coming in, whether they're a newcomer or whether they're continuing in our EL program, that the system that we have in place is systematic and covers all the areas and making sure that all our documentation is in place. There have also been some changes through KSDE that are also reflected in the changes that were, or the proposed changes for the handbook. So this page, I think he has 3 pages on these, so I won't go through each one of these, but the headings that were removed, those 3 areas are reflected within the individual learning plan. So instead of having those all separate, it's all part. Anything that's going to happen to that student's individual learning plan will be reflected in this document that Mr. Robinson created, which makes it very simple to know exactly what are the steps that we need to go through to be able to make sure we're providing the services that our ELL kiddos need, in addition to whether they're ready to exit, what is it, whether they will qualify, what that means. So all of those things are reflected in this handbook. Underneath the individual learning plan guidelines, these are all KSDE reflected changes. So all of those have been reflected within what KSD is expected and the changes that they have made. The individual learning plans, like I said, Mr. Robinson changed or developed a really great individual learning plan that will make it so much easier and streamlined. So you can see there are a lot of changes reflected in the handbook that have to do with the individual learning plans. And then procedures for new English learners, because we are getting more and more new English learners coming to our district, and some that are coming at the high school level, which so there's a lot of things that need to be considered when those students come into our system. And so those things, again, are reflected within that area of procedures for our new English learners, especially looking at testing and who qualifies for testing and who needs to be taking CALPA and so forth. So all of that has been updated to reflect what's expected by our state. And that actually has quite a few changes. As you will see, the last 2 pages are full of the things that will be reflected with our new students coming in. So, any questions? I know that, just letting you know this too, that Mr. Robinson and myself, met with our ELL teachers, both teachers, and went through these changes and also went through the changes of the ILP. Any questions?
My only question was, I'm just curious, sometimes we hear it referred to as ELL and sometimes EL. Is there a standard, or is it just?
Usually it's ELL, English Language Learners, but you will also see just English learners.
Thank you.
It kind of goes both ways.
Thank you. Thanks for all your work on that as well.
All right, I didn't ask an elementary person to come in because there's one change to the elementary handbook, and it's based upon COVID, that ultimately gives administrators some discretion to address attendance the way that they need to. So prior to that, attendance was very stringent. So I think if what the elementary principals were looking at is, if the expectation is if you're not feeling well to stay at home, then we should reduce some of the consequences for people choosing to stay home when they're sick. So how we address those things is now at administrator discretion, which gives them some latitude moving through. So other than that, there are no changes to the elementary handbook, and I think that you can see there is a lot that governs our processes in schools. It is a lot.
I would just like to say that I'm in support of that, because I know when last year I had or the year before, I guess now, I had a kindergarten, and it was very threatening when you got that letter that they were going to be contacting like Child Protective Services, and I'm like, she was sick, people. You don't want me to get the other kids sick. So I think we definitely need to address that.
Yeah. So when we deal with truancy, there's a very stringent format to it. So if you are unexcused absent for 3 days in a row or 7 days in a year, then you're automatically deemed as truant under the law. If we want to go down that path, we certainly have the ability to. It just doesn't make sense to do that to our families when we know that there are extenuating circumstances for them. So this gives us some discretion to be able to make better decisions about how we want to address.
And a lot of times those little kids are like getting used to the germs from all the other kids. So
yeah, there's a lot for that. But anyway, you can see a ton of work has gone into our handbooks. You haven't even got to the licensed and classified staff handbooks yet. I figured that I would save you all from a few more handbooks tonight. It's been a long night, so I think there's no action on handbooks. So
All right.
enjoy your reads.
We appreciate that work, because we only need those when things go bad.
Yes.
And it's got to be right when things go bad.
We
So
really have good
we
handbooks.
appreciate it.
We have good
Absolutely.
handbooks.
All right, we're going to move on down to the personnel report. You've all been given a personnel report. Is there a motion to approve that report?
So moved.
Is-
Second. I'll be second.
All right, so we have
Oh, it was a second
movement
wheel.
moved by Chris Cunningham and seconded by Susan Ward. All in favor, please raise your right hand.
Harold, yes.
All right, and that passes 7-0, and we are down to announcements.
All right, so last time I said summer school started next week. I was lying about that when I meant driver's ed. Summer school actually starts July 6th. Principals have been contacting parents over the course of the last few days. Hopefully we get a great turnout. There is still some aversion to summer school in general, so we'll work through those things. We are underway in our accreditation process. You saw some information about that in our update. It will be a big deal when it comes. It'll be a 4-day event, and it will be a lot when it comes. So we'll continue to prepare for that and make sure that our board members are preparing for that. It was an interesting thing. If you read the Wichita Eagle, I think is what it's called today. There was actually an open records request for the KSD competencies for classes or for the standards that they have been very secretive about and not supposed to release until July 9th. But because they mentioned them in open session, they're now open to records requests, and they have been requested by the Wichita Eagle, and I would subsequently think that they'll be published in an upcoming, which may create a large stir considering they're not yet complete. But the idea behind this is that the competencies that they're creating would ultimately help us identify whether or not kids have learned the expected outcomes over the year versus seat time. So instead of saying 1,116 hours, they met these competencies we'll work through that. We'll see how it goes. There's still a lot to be determined with that, but we'll continue to monitor and see what the recommendations are. You have begun to see schools release their open plans for next year. I think KCK came out today and said that they're going to open as normal. You guys have been given some information about different options for us as well as conversation. There is still some things that are yet to be determined in terms of funding from the state and how they identify a remote learner versus an attendance learner. I think it's important for us to know what guidance the state provides for us before we definitively make that plan. But we'll continue to discuss what that is, continue to work with the Franklin County Health Department to make those decisions. But it's been a long night. Those are the announcements. Thank you all for a great meeting, and if there's any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor, raise your right hand.
Harold is
All right,
yes.
that passes 7-0.
Thank you, everybody.